from the News Channel 5 network. This is OpenLine.
Good evening and welcome to Open Line. I'm Chris Davis sitting in with you tonight. We've got a really interesting topic tonight. It's hard to believe, but 2 years ago today is when Metro officially issued the Safer at Home order, and the adventure, probably that's too light of a term, the odyssey that has come with the pandemic really got underway here in Nashville and of course across the world. It's changed how so many things, how we operate, what we do, and of course it hasn't totally left us either. But joining us tonight is Dr. Spyros Kalams from Vanderbilt University. Thank you so much, Doctor, for being with us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
So like everybody else, 2 years ago today, everybody's world changed, but it sounds like yours definitely did too.
It did, and I was speaking with a colleague in the middle of all of this who told me there may be some vaccine trials in the works, and I had not done anything outside of HIV vaccine research until then. And I think within an hour after getting off the call, I got an email saying we're going to have a Zoom meeting tomorrow, and we were told, okay, you're going to be participating in SARS-CoV-2 vaccine research, and specifically this Moderna trial. So within a matter of hours, I was kind of recruited into this fold to test the vaccine.
So, you know, with that in mind, from the very beginning, was the goal to get to a place where there could be a vaccine? Like, talk about that from kind of a, from your perspective.
It really, yeah, it was 0 to 60 in 2 seconds. It was, I think when people look at the speed of vaccine development, something that we are all very proud of. I mean, we are very happy to pat ourselves on the back for that. And I played a relatively small role compared to the vast number of players. But it was fast. That was the goal. And this research for a SARS vaccine had been going on for 20 years, right? There was an original SARS in 2003, and then another smaller outbreak of something called MERS, a Middle Eastern respiratory virus, all related. So the research was in place to make a vaccine for those, but they weren't pandemics, but they were so rapid and so deadly that they really burned out very quickly. So all of the research was there and had been developing, and so as soon as the genetic sequence of SARS-CoV-2 was out, the vaccine was designed. It was manufactured, and obviously we had Moderna and Pfizer both pursuing similar strategies. And they said, here we go. We've already done a lot of testing here, and we're ready for a phase 3 trial.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I think a lot of times when you hear conversations about skepticism, is people said, oh, well, this happened so quickly. But there was some groundwork already in place for this.
Yeah, absolutely. I wish there were breakthroughs. You know, research always, it looks like there are big breakthroughs, but breakthroughs don't happen unless you have an infrastructure and lay the groundwork, and that's the case here. I mean, this technology had been developing slowly, so it looks like that very slowly and then all at once, and so that's why we were able to do this so rapidly. But yes, the infrastructure and the mechanisms and the way to make the vaccine, and even to the point of how do you test a vaccine like that groundwork had been laid for years before this.
Absolutely. Obviously, thankfully so, we are in a much different position today than we were 2 years ago. What would you say is the current status of where we are in the pandemic?
I think I follow the case counts. I don't know how most people do, but I will follow the Centers for Disease Control, graphics in publications. The New York Times has a front page devoted to where the case counts are, like everybody else. So I know we've been in the middle of this, well, we're at the tail end of this Omicron surge. I think we all hope that, okay, maybe we can breathe. We were here before. I don't want to be a pessimist. I think we rejoiced for about 2.5 weeks, maybe, and then a lot of us saw what was happening in South Africa with this Omicron variant, and there was a collective uh-oh, because I remember 2 years ago, in January or December, I was seeing patients in the hospital, and we were talking about there were a lot of cases in Europe, and that's when there were travel bans. And as infectious disease specialists, as soon as we knew this was a respiratory virus, you said you can block travel, but it's already here. I mean, this wasn't just one person saying that. Everybody knew it's here already, guys. I mean, so, but I'm cautiously optimistic for reasons I'd be happy to go into in more details. But right now, the variants that are out there, our current vaccines still look to be highly effective at certainly keeping people out of the hospital, even if they don't prevent all infections, and I'm happy to expand on that as well. So I'm optimistic. I'm also optimistic that if another variant of SARS-CoV-2 comes out, that we are ready to test vaccines for some of these, because that's in the works as well.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, just to be able to hear the word optimistic in this season sounds great.
I mean, I have to. I mean, we have to be. I mean, it's like, look, we're tired too. I mean, nobody wants a pandemic to go on.
Right.
So we're just...
Sure. So to that end, you said that you can kind of go into some more detail. It made me think when you're talking about the Omicron variant, you're right. We had like a 2-week span where it's like, okay, maybe we're in the clear, but already you're starting to hear some researchers say, there's some things that are unsettling. Yeah. Is there anything quite like that out there right now?
I know there's they have all these letters and numbers, and I think it just gets, it's confusing to us as well, but there are these, viruses change. That's just what they do. So this is not a unique thing. That viruses, the whole way that they work is that errors are built into the programming. So at least the variants I'm hearing don't have a different Greek letter. So I think when they call it BA.2 subvariant, I mean, I think you can say if it's a subvariant of something that's already out there, and we know that the vaccines can work against, I think I'm still optimistic. So until they give it a new, and they say it's more contagious, et cetera, but because it's not different enough to designate it, that's why I think we're going to be okay, but I could be proven wrong. So.
Sure. Hope you're not, but I totally understand where you're coming from. I want to bring in William to the conversation. He is standing by on the phone with us. William, go ahead. I think we may have lost William. So William, if you call back, we'll try to get you in, or this is a good chance to remind everybody, it's not just me asking the questions tonight. We want you to be involved with the conversation as well. So, when it comes to best practices while we're in this kind of new era of the pandemic, what are your thoughts on masks at this point?
I think that's the hardest question. I think coming over here is, boy, I hope he doesn't ask me about masks. I think that is the hard, I think that there are a couple of, I don't know how to make the one-size-fits-all kind of rules for it. I mean, in general terms, if there's a lot of virus circulating around, and you have a lot of unvaccinated people, and you have friends or acquaintances who are immune compromised, I would suggest keep masking up. But it's really hard to come up with what to do for businesses and schools, and having a, you can see how difficult the CDC has in coming up with guidelines, because no matter what they say, you can find an exception that will say, well, that doesn't work or can't work. I personally I'm feeling more safer and safer not wearing a mask, but I'm in a different situation. I have to see patients. So if I'm going to go into a crowded area, even though I'm vaccinated, I still can't afford to get infected. So if I'm going to be in a crowded area, even though I've been vaccinated and boosting, I will probably still wear a mask, because I can't afford to transmit this to somebody who may have a compromised immune system. So that's my personal feelings. It's a wishy-washy kind of answer, but I'm starting to see, I'm kind of getting okay with starting to lift some of these mask mandates. However, if you're going to do that, I would hope that if cases go up, you're just as willing to put the mask mandates back on. You can't, you shouldn't have it both ways, right? So if we're going to do this cautiously, let's see what happens. But you also got to be willing to realize when the data proves you wrong, and maybe we should start it up. So I'm hoping that's a reasonable, common sense kind of answer for people.
Absolutely. So often, people have been learning all sorts of new vocabulary as this has moved on. The word endemic is starting to come up a little bit bit more. For one, if people aren't familiar with that term, what does that kind of mean, and are we getting anywhere close to that at this point?
I hope so. I think, yeah, endemic, my goodness, people struggle with words so often, and that in the beginning of this, is it pandemic yet? And I was like, well, I mean, it's already been in several countries now. I would say it counts as pandemic. And then when we talk about endemic, I think in terms of seasonal coronaviruses, right? So we have, before this version of coronavirus, and even now, there were circulating coronaviruses just caused the common cold that are if you put these, I don't want to get into jargon here, but if you put the genetic programs, the sequences, you can make a tree, and you can see where the sequences lie on branches of the tree. And SARS-CoV-2 was on its own branch, and the seasonal coronaviruses were over here, and yet. And that just because you had immune response or immunity to the seasonal didn't mean they're, as far as your immune system goes, these were completely different things. But now, with all of the existing immunity in the population, either from vaccines or because you became infected or you get both, we might be in the case where this SARS-CoV-2 turns into one of the more seasonal-like viruses. So I'm hoping, I mean, I think everyone's hoping that that's where we're getting to right now. Where does that mean we're going to need a vaccine every year? I don't know about that, but if it seems to me that a lot of people that are getting illness with even this Omicron variant, especially if they've been vaccinated, have mild symptoms. They have sniffles. I'm okay with that. I mean, I get colds, so I will tell you that since wearing my mask, though, I haven't had a cold in over 2 years. I'll probably get one after leaving the studio, but it's been that. I think we've, and we can go over that too. I could tell you about the difference between vaccinated and unvaccinated people in our hospital at Vanderbilt or across the country. But I think we're truly turning this into a mild illness for the vast majority of people who've already seen this virus in one way or another.
Honestly, I think getting into that will probably be the first thing that we get to after this first commercial break, because we're already flying by as I thought we would. We'll have more on the pandemic and what it means moving forward after this break.